Hey everyone, I have to come clean. I have to admit something to you, especially since I'm someone who values authenticity in the reviews that I do. I used to be what people might call a girl boss. Now, hear me out. Just hear me out on this. The term has actually evolved over time, and what it means today is a bit different from what it meant when I first started becoming one. Back then, a girl boss was just a woman who worked really hard to achieve something significant in her life or in her career, something that was still strangely rare in the public sphere because men overwhelmingly dominated the top positions in business and other fields as well. Today, however, the term girl boss has taken on a much more negative meaning. It's become a caricature of a strong, aloof woman, like kind of like a Mary Sue with a more violent edge or edgier personality. Someone who battles their way up to the top at the expense of others and often doesn't genuinely earn the respect that comes with the positions of power that she or they attain. But even with that definitional shift, there's still an argument to be made about the role of a girl boss in society. As much as I actually don't like the term and I don't like girl bosses at this point, I have to look back at my own journey and my journey toward becoming a girl boss, even the older definition of one. It was influenced by my upbringing, as well as my reading and viewing patterns when I was just a kid, as well as a teen. I grew up really freaking poor. We often went without enough money for rent. Sometimes we were getting evicted for food. We often went hungry or even basic necessities because who needed new clothes, right? My mom was a single parent working multiple jobs, and there were days when I went to school hungry, and this was before school lunches were actually a thing. I remember one day someone actually left food on our porch. I was so excited. I ran to the porch. I was so excited, a little bit embarrassed. And I brought that box inside. I opened that sucker up. And then I realized that most of the cans were actually expired. Essentially, they were the discarded, somewhat rotten food that someone else took out of their pantry to give to us. Still, we were grateful to have something to eat. Because when you're hungry, you eat it, even if it wasn't good. I had a deep distrust of men who wanted to help me after that. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. And I know that it's probably oversharing to some degree, but I think it's important to explain why some people, like me, like how I used to be, might need different forms of strong females to help guide them, or why they might actually need to become a girl boss. Sometimes when you're in a desperate situation, you need to see someone who has achieved something, anything, to give you hope that you can do that too, that there might actually be a path that you can take. So kind of had to figure it out on my own. I had to girl boss my way out of a life that was slowly killing me because I couldn't imagine a future where I made it out of my 20s unless I engineered my own future. That's how many of the women within Gen X carved their way forward. And I think girl bosses are actually an artifact of essentially being abandoned to a large degree by our parents who either weren't there or didn't know how to help us, or who had to work so much that we basically had to raise ourselves. And for me, growing up with no role models who had gone to college or achieved financial stability, I realized early on that if I wanted to be more than just another statistic in a poverty report, I had to bootstrap myself out of it. And I hate that term. It's not a great term. That's kind of the mentality that I had in my head because I had to force myself to become a workaholic. I learned Taekwondo to protect myself, and I did everything I could to build a life that was secure, and it worked. I actually became a storyteller. I went to college. I modeled myself after people who shaped me in the stories that they wrote or the stories that they told on screen. I ended up getting 2 degrees that I paid off on my own, and I became a strong and capable person. But I also built these walls around myself, walls so high that I didn't know how to let anyone in without feeling terrified. The risk of becoming vulnerable was almost impossible to overcome. But becoming a writer who had to learn how to strip away those walls for my characters in order to reveal them to my readers actually helped me to see myself so much more clearly. And the person looking back at me through that mirror was a modern day girl boss. I didn't like her because I don't really like girl bosses. Experiencing stories and writing them have always been a part of my life. They're actually what saved my life and helped me to become a better person. Sure, I found comfort in books, but I also learned about honor and courage and love and redemption. Storytelling became a central part of my life, and I learned how to edit the girl boss out of the person I was becoming. It was scary and it was hard, but I had outgrown the need for that part of myself. And so now here I am, a working professional in the technology industry. I still write and edit. I still love science fiction and fantasy. And I do movie reviews because I enjoy them. I still enjoy the act of pulling a story apart to understand how those characters are created. And in that understanding, I see a part of me and I see a part of you and I see a part of everybody else in those characters. That's why it's so important to understand who we are and who these characters are and why good writing matters. Writing and editing helped me to understand that the same things that made characters real and relatable are the same things that made real people real and relatable. That's when I realized that the girl boss I had become was a lot like the characters I despised, bossy, not that likable, and vulnerable, and even disconnected from the world around her. It wasn't great. I wasn't great. This realization led me to rethink how I view and critique girl bosses in movies and in books. I see these women on the screen. I see the positive traits, and I really want to like them. But the modern girl boss is often a damaging, one-dimensional view of a certain type of woman who often builds herself up at the expense of those around her. And when you look around at the other characters within her world, they are often stereotypical examples of dumb, mean, and or clueless men. That's just not a real world example. And women can't rise at the expense of men. It just doesn't work. We must rise in concert and in coordination with men. I know that's an anti-girl boss stance, but hey, that's the truth. The modern girl boss that is taken in anything other than the smallest dose can become toxic to women and girls, as well as to men and boys. As a reviewer, I feel like it's important for me to call out these portrayals honestly as well as to applaud the strong female characters who have successfully avoided the dreaded girl boss title on their way to the top. We need stories that reflect the real world, where these women and men are complex and they're flawed and they're capable of growth individually as well as together. The idealized caricature of a girl boss doesn't serve anyone. And it's time we moved on. It's time we moved beyond that trope because that girl is done. And that is my confession for you. It's kind of weird to be a girl boss or a former girl boss and be a reviewer who calls them out on screen. But I think that's exactly why I need to do it. These girl bosses are an artifact of a time that I came from, of a time that I grew up in. So it's up to girls like me to call them out and to tell everyone that we have to stop creating them. We have to stop supporting them. We have to make more realistic women, women that work with men, women that brush up against men or conflict with men, but still work really well in a story. And you can see their depth and their anger and their pain and their triumph. That's what a strong female character looks like. And that's what Hollywood should be striving for. All right, everybody. Enough of me and my girl bossiness. Time to get back to it. And I will see you all again soon. Thanks so much.